Salutations everybody, Feeso here, and since my last video, I got a copyright strike on my One Piece chapter 903 review. I'm not mad. Okay, I'm a bit mad because I really tried to be as fair use-friendly as possible, and after all the effort the video went through, it's just heartbreaking to see it get pulled down, and I'm just worried about the future of the channel. So for now, while the dispute is being resolved, you're just gonna have to tolerate plain old me just talking at you. There's not gonna be much editing. I don't think there'll be any music, but hey, you get to hear my thoughts on the chapter, and ultimately that's why you're here, hopefully. So let's get right into it. One Piece chapter 905. And man, I was actually really sad when I got that strike. But when I read this chapter, it cheered me right up, because it is literally one of the best chapters we've had in the last 5, 6, 7 weeks. And I know that's a big claim considering the huge stuff that has happened, but I just love this. It's set up so well, and I can't believe that it's actually here. So we start out with Orlumbus folding clothes. Psh, who cares? Get out of here, Orlumbus. We actually start out with a big reveal panel of New Marineford. Now, we have seen it a couple of times before, but the level of detail here is awesome. And we get a recap, basically, of why there's a New Marineford, and just basically it fulfills the same function of protecting the world nobles. Only this time it's on the opposite end of the Grand Line that Old Marineford is. Basically, G1 and Marineford swap place. This is information that was conveyed to us at the very beginning of the time skip from the barkeep who Nami met, but I think Oda felt it's been a bit too long since we heard that, so we get more clarification with the diagram and all that. But man, things are getting heated in New Marineford because Sakazuki, new fleet admiral, just going bonkers because Fujitora has actually gone to Reverie. And this is something I didn't expect. I thought that we saw Fujitora too recently, so I did not predict this, but Fuji is there, and he's such a legend. So if you remember, at the end of Dressrosa, Sakazuki forbade Fujitora from going into any marine-run facilities. This guy was as good as exiled until he captured Law and Luffy. So Sakazuki's like, why didn't you just stop him? Why didn't you tell me? Blah, blah, blah. And the guy who's reporting to Sakazuki was like, well, he had a flawless argument, and that was that Marijoa is not a Navy-run facility. Sakazuki goes mental because of the technicality of it. And that was just the funniest thing all chapter. I absolutely marked out. Fujitora has skyrocketed to be one of my favorite admirals. I was a little bit iffy on him during Dressrosa because he was a bit flip-floppy, and we didn't really get as much insight into him as I wanted to, but man, he's just a legend. And we get Sengoku peering around the corner saying, yeah, my old job's pretty tough, isn't it? Just being a classic troll, a old man who's just giving the next generation a hard time. It's a great role for him. And it's funny to see Sakazuki, a really serious character, just react to this kind of banter. It's kind of out of place, but I'm loving it. And we get confirmation that Green Bull is actually attending Reverie. So that's a prediction in the bag. But bragging aside, we'll go straight into all the royalty arriving at Marijoa. And the way that they're taken up is that they're taken up in these bubble structures called bondolas. And they basically ride up the red line. So that's a nice bit of world building. It explains how they got up there. I'm always curious about how Oda justifies travel with the red line there. With Germa 66, we actually got snails that rode up the wall, but here we've got just bubbles that float up the wall, and it's cool, and yeah, I just want to see that things work in a logical way. I don't need the ins and outs of it, I just want to know that the universe is believable. And Oda is an expert at doing this. Each time we arrive on a new island, he makes sure to set up the logistical features of a civilization, such as the way they travel, their economy, just the general stuff that they like to do. And it's one of those things that makes One Piece into a series that feels like it has multiple series in it. It feels like a world that just branches out endlessly. We see all these royal parties arriving, and honestly, some of them are just really funny stereotypes. We've got the Rushan Kingdom, which is like, they're based on Russian dolls, and like, you can see that they each progressively get smaller, as if each one fits inside the last one. You've got Ballywood, you've got Tajin, you've got all these various kingdoms, but the one that made me crack up is the Taco Kingdom. And the guys look like they're wearing some stereotypical sombreros or like mariachi hats. I don't even know, I'm not an expert, but it just seemed like Oda was pulling from various stereotypes just to make the various kingdoms seem diverse. After this small little montage of panels, we get the arrival of the Fishman Island party, who are actually escorted by Garp, the hero of the Marines, so it's a really big deal to them. Which is surprising given that the Oda box informs us that Fishman Island has actually been part of the world government for 200 years. However, they have never gotten this sort of attention, because they've only been to Reverie twice. This is their second time in 200 years. They've clearly never been treated as equals. However, the Ryugu party are clearly looking to change all that. Now, my first reaction to all this was, wait a second, Garp is with them? Maybe my theory of Shirahoshi being taken into custody is wrong, because I thought that things would have to go bad for her. But with Garp there, well, he can protect her, right? He's a pretty decent guy. But, of course, Garp doesn't stay with them, so my theory's still on the table there. But before Garp leaves, we actually get a bunch of people crowding around the Fishman Island party, basically gawking over Shirahoshi and her beauty, because they've heard rumors that she's even prettier than Hancock. I'm not gonna weigh in on this debate, I'll let the fans decide who the best waifu is, but you can see Bad News Morgan's reporting on this big news with massive hearts in his eyes, and just going crazy over it. He basically can't hear the people who are taking photos with him. He's just so enamored with Shirahoshi. Garp says it's basically because she's big and pretty and laughs it off. And right as Garp is about to leave, we bump into Sterry, or Sterry? It looks like Oda has done it again. He's romanized and changed an L to an R. Please let this happen to Arabasta. But anyway, he's changed an L to an R, which means all the wikis have to be updated because, hey, we've got an official romanization now. I mean, sure, it could be some English going on here, but we might as well take the author at his word. So, Sterry, he's actually Sabo's brother, or rather adopted brother. His parents adopted him after Szabo ran away, and raised him to basically be a candidate to get into a royal family, which he did. He married into it, and now he's aiming his ambition slightly higher. He whispers to Garp that he wants to be a world noble. Now Garp just he brushes him off, says he's pathetic, and Sterry reacts really comically, which is about what I expected. However, his previous appearance, when his face was all in shadow and everyone was afraid of him, might have suggested that he was a bit more serious than he was in his youth. But no, he's just a bumbling fool. And honestly, kind of reminded me of Buggy. I'm wondering if he will start failing upwards and actually achieve his ambitions. But yeah, he's really just a piece of work, and we get reminded this via another recap. So Oda clearly thought that too much time has elapsed since the Ace, Luffy, and Szabo flashback. So after we go into this bit of a recap, Sterry is scared off by Garp and then notices the fishmen, and of course, being the typical racist, obnoxious noble that we all expect from One Piece, he runs away because he thinks that the fishmen have some kind of disease. Now, I do like that Oda is maintaining this inferiority thing with the fishmen. The nobles all think that they're just fish and they shouldn't be given rights. So we are setting the seeds for how difficult the fishermen's arguments are gonna be when they get to actually debating at Reverie. So after Sterry runs off, we've got Garp leaving, saying goodbye to Shirahoshi. Really nice panels of them waving at each other. And yep, at this moment I was like, she's doomed. Because without Garp there, bad things are probably going to happen. Because I don't think that the secret will be kept. How will the secret get out? Well, there is Koribu, and if he was ever captured, he might talk. Granted, Koribu wasn't captured at the end of his cover story, but I think that there are a few ways in which the world government can find out about Shirahoshi. The most obvious of which is the fact that she used her powers in public, not just during the Fishman Island arc, but during the flashback when her mother was in danger. So there should be, in theory, enough eyewitnesses to put it all together, especially if the world government has more of the puzzle pieces than we do. But yeah, we get this nice little character moment where Shirahoshi is admiring the view, and we actually got a couple of those because Shirahoshi thought that a tree was a forest. But when she actually sees how beautiful the sunshine is above the water, she really internalizes her mother's wishes of everyone just moving above the water. Because I think before the royal family just wanted to honor her memory and fulfill her wish, but now they actually wish it themselves, and they all have a nice moment smiling and saying, oh yeah, we're going to ask for this, it'll all work out. So you know it's not gonna work out. That's basically what Oda's telling us. But one thing I do have to comment on is I find it really interesting that Shirahoshi is, at the moment, the centerpiece. I really thought it would be Vivi. But yeah, it's looking like it's Shirahoshi. Now, I've got no doubt that Vivi will play an integral part and will be the center of attention when she actually arrives. Especially since she was on the cover of Jump 2 chapters ago when the arc began. But for now, it's time for Shirahoshi to shine. And by shine, I mean basically just enjoying the surface until things go wrong. Now, after this, we get the scene of the chapter, with Fujitora just eating his food and talking, shooting the breeze with, I'm gonna call him Rio, and I'll call Fujitora Fuji, just to be different. So, Fuji's like, hey man, I was just, going around all these places, and Rio's like, oh yeah, I heard about that, did you see Vega Punk? And Fuji's like, nah, but I heard about his invention, and you know what that's gonna mean? It means that we'll be able to get rid of this thing which I've really hated for a while. Rio's like, what? And he's like, oh yeah, the Shichibukai, or the Warlords. He wants to get rid of the Warlords, and frankly, it's about time that the world government or the Marines decided to try and get rid of the Warlords, because they're nothing but trouble. Moria was nothing but trouble. Doflamingo, Crocodile, like all of them, Law, they're all just rebels, and all they're doing is giving people who hate them time to prepare their latest criminal ventures. And of course they always end up being taken out, and it's a big embarrassment for the world government. They have to reshuffle the members. It's ultimately more stress than it's worth, especially considering its corruption. Most decent Marines like Smoker don't even trust the Warlords, and someone like Zed, he got his arm cut off by a Warlord. Non-canon, but still, it's interesting information. So I completely get where Fujitora is coming from, but let's say that this did happen and all Warlords are suddenly enemies of the state. If we go through them one by one, I don't think too much changes, because no one's gonna mess with Mihawk. He's basically a one-man army who's seemingly a bit of a nomad. He won't really do anything, and the government aren't likely to pursue him. Hancock was ready to leave before the time skip, and she's basically an ally of Luffy right now anyway. Buggy has his ventures with basically being a pirate rental business for hire. I'm not really sure how Buggy's situation works, but obviously Buggy stands no chance against the world government. However, I'm not quite convinced that the world government even sees him as a threat. And if they don't see him as a threat, why would he be worth having as a warlord? Next up, we've got Bartholomew Kuma. He's a human weapon. Whether or not he has the title, they still control him. And yeah, finally you've got Whitebeard Jr. Yeah, he's a thing, isn't he? Moving right along. This is more Fujitora's opinion as far as I'm concerned, but him saying it in such a Don manner makes me think that it might be a topic in Reverie. But how will the world government maintain balance? Well, maybe they're seeing the disruption to the Yonko as something that they can take advantage as an opportunity. that maybe they don't need the Warlords, or maybe they've got a secret weapon that actually nullifies the need for a Warlord. Either way, this is a huge kind of statement to make, especially going into an arc where we're hoping that big changes will happen. But what could be Vegapunk's invention? Well, he could be working on a way of mass producing an ancient weapon or adapting it to modern technology, or he could be doing something that's completely different. If it replaces the need for a warlord, it needs to have the ability to build a significant amount of fear around it. And it needs to have something that can help them control the pirate situation. So I'm very eager to see what Vegapunk's new invention might be. But yeah, we've actually got confirmation here that Vegapunk is an old man. So that's a neat little detail to file away for later. The final thing I want to comment on is Ryo's personality. Now, he seems to be a fairly lax guy, but not in the way that Kizaru is. He's less sloth and more just a shambles because he hasn't eaten for 3 years because it's a pain. That goes beyond sloth. That's just so lazy that it's ridiculous. But also he seems to have a sense of style or a sense of pride because he said that he wouldn't mind eating if some lady was there to feed him and he can just go, ah. Honestly, this is still making me think that he's a young guy. Especially considering how Fujitora seems to be so open with him, offering him his food and stuff. If he was such an indoctrinated kind of stick in the mud, I don't think that this conversation would go quite this way. But in terms of his kind of justice, I really just don't know, because we've had these kinds of lazy marines before with Aokiji and Kizaru. So if I had to guess, he would go somewhere between Fujitora and Kizaru. And obviously the most extreme of them is Sakazuki. Anyway, after this we get a scene I wasn't expecting. We get to see the revolutionaries again. And it's just Koala casually talking about her motivation to Betty. And basically it's to free the fishmen, but Betty's like, how can you do that if they're part of the world government? We want to take them down, don't we? And Koala's like, not necessarily. We just want to take down the world noble. So that's it. A 100% kind of mission statement of the revolutionaries. We knew that they wanted change of some sort, and many could assume that they wanted to get rid of this nobility system. However, it's interesting to hear that they're not necessarily against globalization and they don't want everywhere to have independence. What they want is just everyone to be equal. So it doesn't necessarily matter that the world government is such a centralized government or anything like that. I was just thinking that there might be a deeper level of politics to this, but no, it's really black and white as far as I can see. It's about the institution of this hierarchy that they want to expunge from the political system. So that's a fairly decent goal which everyone can get behind. And going from there, we get to see another cutaway to Sterry, who's still freaking out about the fishmen and the giants and all the different races he's seeing and how it's all so weird. And then he starts freaking out about something else. Crows flying along in the distance. And Shirahoshi sees it and pets the crows and is all like, oh, it's so pretty. But Sterry's like, oh, you gotta shoot those birds, man. They'll pop our bubble. And the guard says, don't worry about it, sir. The crows have never popped the bubble before. So please don't worry yourself, King Sterry. And with a dawn, we get to see Szabo's in the armor, escorting his adopted brother Sterry to Marijua with a big old grin on his face. And the moment I saw Sterry, I was like, oh, I can't wait to see Szabo interact with him. But having him infiltrate like this, I'm absolutely thrilled, because I thought that Szabo would enter the, like, crashing through a window or something. But he's actually going to be in the room. This is really exciting because he'll get to see people like Vivi and Shirahoshi firsthand and what they're going to go through in this meeting. And he's going to be there to intervene. But putting him right there in the line of fire, he seems like prime material to get jobbed out for the sake of establishing Rio or Green Bull or whatever new weapons or features or plans the world government has. Now, I'm not saying he's going to die or anything, especially with Luffy not there, but he might get injured or have to flee or captured or something like that. I really don't want it to be captured though, because I don't want a rescue arc. But still, I fear for Szabo. I think he's going to do some awesome stuff here, and he's going to help out Vivi and Shirahoshi. But I do fear for where his plan is heading, because although it seems awesome and hype, things that are this awesome and hype can't last. And sadly, nor could this chapter, because it really cheered me up and it was a really great continuation by Oda. I was a tad disappointed about no chapter last week, but this more than makes up for it, and I am genuinely super excited to see where this goes next. The Reverie is here, man! Till next time, guys, please check out my other videos, and please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear where you guys think Reverie is going. But until next time, farewell.